Okay, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy White, and I'm a policy consultant for Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks. Also joining us this morning is Melanie Schlotterbeck and Yesenia Rivera. Melanie is the Green Vision Project Coordinator for Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks. She manages the group's Green Vision map and numerous coalitions and has focused more recent work on the Southern California Association of Governments conservation policies to ensure the environment is considered when planning for the future. Yesenia is Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks Community Outreach Coordinator and has been very helpful in getting attendees to participate in this and other 30 by 30 workshops hosted by Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks. She will be the Spanish interpreter for today's workshop. Right now, Yesenia is going to transition to the Spanish language channel of this presentation, and that'll take a second. Thank you so much, Yesenia.
Buenos días, gracias por unirte a nosotros hoy. Mi nombre es Amy White y soy una consultora de políticas de amigos, puertas, playas y parques conocido como Friends, Harbors, Beaches and Parks o FHBP. También nos acompañará Melanie Schlotterbeck y yo, Yesenia Rivera. Melanie es la coordinadora del proyecto Green Vision de amigos, puertos y playas. FHBP, mejor conocido. Ella administra el Green Vision Map del grupo y numerosas coalizaciones que se centra en el trabajo más reciente en las políticas de conservación, SCAG, para garantizar que tenga en cuenta el medio ambiente y planificar el futuro. Yo soy coordinadora de alcance comunitario de FHBP. Seré la intérprete de español para el taller de hoy. En este momento voy a transicionar al canal en español para esta presentación. Gracias.
So, founded in 1997, Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, as you're probably well aware, is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to supporting projects that contribute to a healthy ecosystem and opposing projects that don't. It continues to be an effective voice for parks, water, open space, and environmental education. I'm now going to share my screen and we'll get started with the presentation. As part of Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks policy work is advocating for strong environmental policies in the SCAG region. Connect SoCal's document, which is the purpose of this webinar today, is very important in ensuring that environmental policies are included in future planning. This planning document is currently in the development phase. This is an outline of today's agenda. We'd like you to leave this webinar today with a greater understanding of SCAG's objectives for its Connect SoCal plan, in addition to how to participate to guarantee that the collective needs of the community are reflected in the policies included. And finally, given FHBP's mission, and presumably yours as well, we're going to highlight conservation policies in particular because our advocacy ensures that the environment isn't given short shrift. As a note, there will be time for a Q&A at the conclusion of the presentation. You're probably certainly aware of the geography that the Southern California Association of Governments covers. SCAG, as you know it's called, is a large and diverse territory. The number of people residing in the SCAG region is over 19 million and represents almost half of the entire population in California. Given the astonishing size of SCAG's population and territory, the policies that SCAG adopts in the Connect SoCal plan are incredibly influential. Connect SoCal is a policy document that comprises input from people who work and live in the SCAG region. These policies shape decisions related to transportation, housing, the economy, and the environment. The Connect SoCal plan includes over 6,000 transportation projects throughout the region. These projects come directly from local transportation agencies and are not new projects. Instead, they are already adopted in the long-range transportation plan of the local transportation agency. Oops, pardon me. A major goal of the policies contained in the document is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Oops, sorry, I keep switching the slide. A major goal of the policies contained in the document is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is because of two bills, AB 32 and SB 375. I know you're well aware of these two bills, but a very brief history reminder. The passage of AB 32, or the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, marked a watershed moment in California's history. Its full implementation, including plans such as Connect SoCal, will help mitigate risk associated with climate change while improving energy efficiency, expanding the use of renewable energy resources, cleaner transportation, and reducing waste. SB 375, the Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act of 2008, instructs the California Air Resources Board to set regional emissions reduction targets from passenger vehicles. So what the Metropolitan Planning Organization for each region then develops a sustainable community strategy. And I tell you all this because that's what we're talking about today. The next few slides further define the two documents SCAG is responsible for creating: a regional transportation plan and a sustainable community strategy. Regional transportation plans, or RTPs, are required to be updated and adopted by each metropolitan planning organization and sent to the federal government for conformance every 4 years. This allows SCAG to be eligible for federal transportation dollars. Connect SoCal meets this federal requirement, and this is why SCAG goes through this plan development process every 4 years. The last time SCAG produced an RTP was in 2020. Sustainable Community Strategies, or SCS, unlike an RTP, are a specifically California state requirement for metropolitan areas. SCSs are directed by the state to create and implement strategies to achieve a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 19% by 2035. Other regions have other targets. The Connect SoCal plan serves to also meet the state requirement while also meeting the RTP federal requirement. It certainly makes sense and is more efficient to do them together. This particular slide I included because I think it highlights all the pieces in the Connect SoCal document: policies, goals, strategies, funding, programs, projects. It's a good visual. And this, I will say, as we all know, government objectives can be lofty. And yes, Connect SoCal's are lofty as well. However, these stated objectives are important because they ultimately guide the policies that will be included in the plan. So drilling down from the overall objectives of Connect SoCal, here is the list of the plan's focus areas, While on the surface, these focus areas might not seem overly related to the environment, but they most certainly are. How we plan and build transportation and housing, in addition to all land use decisions, definitely impact the overall health of our environment. This graphic illustrates exactly where SCAG is in the document development process. As I mentioned, the plan must be adopted in 2024. As I said, the last one was in 2020. Currently, SCAG is doing outreach to gather input on the community's desires for what should be included in the plan. That's why we're talking to you today. Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks wants to hear from you about what you feel is most important for the plan to address in terms of environmental policies. While the Connect SoCal plan covers many topics, Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks is particularly focused on guaranteeing through advocacy that strong conservation policies are included. This slide highlights what types of policies are possible in this type of plan. How do we know they're possible? Because related policies are embedded in past plans, and jurisdictions are implementing related policies as well. And that shows us that this is possible. Included in Connect SoCal's 2020 plan are policies to protect farmland. SCAG acknowledges that when sustainably maintained, preserving rather than developing arable lands and pastures ensures carbon sequestration, in which carbon is absorbed by the soil instead of concentrating in the atmosphere. And that's a direct quote from SCAG's 2020 plan. We also choose to highlight as an example from the 2020 plan, Ventura County's progressive efforts to protect farmland and establish urban growth boundaries via voter initiative. And this is Ventura County SOAR initiative. It's a great example about how to protect farmland and establish urban growth boundaries. Another good example of the types of policies that can be included in the Connect SoCal document is the current effort in the city of Los Angeles to protect wildlife corridors. And again, the purpose of these few slides is to really highlight for you what's possible in the Connect SoCal plan. These are active policies that are either included in jurisdictions in the SCAG region or have already been included in past SCAG plans. And finally, a mechanism that has proven successful in many jurisdictions throughout the SCAG region and beyond is advanced mitigation. Advanced mitigation for transportation projects generates funds to offset those transportation projects' environmental impacts by both protecting new lands and funding habitat restoration of existing protected areas. For instance, the Orange County Transportation Authority has a premier, just an excellent example for other agencies to emulate and for Connect SoCal 2024 to include in their plan. Now, as we mentioned, the purpose of this meeting today is to really find out what's important to you. So we talked about, and I'm sure many of you already knew what a regional transportation plan is and a sustainable community strategy, but we did highlight what those are. We highlighted, why SCAG is doing this every 4 years. And we talked about what their objectives are. And then we talked about what's really possible and including in the new plan. So now we want to know what's important to you. So Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks can advocate for those policies on your behalf and tell you, how you can advocate as well. So here's a list, and this isn't exhaustive, but here's a list of, environmental areas of interest. And I'm sure, you have your particular environmental area of interest that's important to you, that's important to your community. So remember that the Connect SoCal plan will only reflect what the community wants if the community participates. So the 2024 plan, you got to keep in mind that it's not automatically going to contain strong conservation, strong environmental policies. The only reason those policies were included in the past is because organizations like Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, and probably your organizations as well, really advocated for those policies to be included. So here are some actions that you can take for the 2024 plan. So SCAG has a survey that we will certainly share with you. Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks developed a survey, and just so you know, that survey will be included in the chat for you to take. It's a very simple survey, but it really will highlight what's most important to you and your community in terms of environmental and conservation policies that should be included in this plan. And then the draft plan will be coming out soon, and SCAG will welcome comments on the draft plan. SCAG will hold many hearings on the plan, and you can always reach out to your SCAG representative and voice your goals that way for the plan. And all of these actions that we've outlined here, we'll certainly stay in touch with you and let you know, when is the right time to take these actions, to do these things. Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks has been around for a long time, and their advocacy work has been very successful. And so they will ensure that you're aware of when those opportunities to comment are. So now we really want to hear, from you about what questions you have about what's been discussed. If you have any questions about how to participate, if you have any questions about what in particular was said. Melanie Schlotterback is here to, she's definitely the policy guru in these areas. And so she's here to assist in answering any of the questions. And if you do have a question, please, let us know in the chat, and we'll definitely get your question answered.
And Amy, I'll go ahead and add that if you want to actually talk in this webinar, just raise your hand using the reaction feature down at the bottom of your panel, and we'll promote you to a panelist. In order to do Spanish translation, we had to do a webinar as opposed to a meeting. And so we had to add on this feature where we could promote attendees to a panelist in order to talk. So raise your hand.
And just thank you. And before I stop sharing this PowerPoint, I did just want to show you that here is the survey from Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks. But again, a link to this survey will be in the chat, so you can click on it directly from there. And the survey won't take you long, but I think it's really important for us to have those responses from you, so then we can then go to SCAG on the community's behalf and tell them what they want, what you guys want in the plan.
So raise your hand if you.
Yeah, definitely raise your hand if you have any questions. We're happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Doesn't look like there's any questions.
You can also enter something into the chat.
Yeah. And of course, we have all the participants' information for a follow-up. Great. Oh, that's a good question. How are our comments incorporated by SCAG? I'll let you take it first, Melanie. I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but I'll let you take that first. How are the comments from the community incorporated by SCAG?
So the phase we're in right now is soliciting feedback. So our goal is to capture the environmental community's goals and priorities. As you heard, there are a lot of different topics covered in this document, but the environment is one of the pillars, one of the 4 pillars. So we are using the survey, we're taking notes during the workshops, and we're providing that information directly to SCAG so that the more they hear from, in our instance, the environmental community, if they see a lot of participation, they're going to know that they better incorporate some policies that keep the environmentalists happy about things. And then what our goal is to take that feedback and use it in our advocacy work, because now we know what you're interested in. And so if it's not incorporated into the plan, we have another opportunity during the official comment period, which will likely be in the late fall. So maybe October, November, December, they're dark. So we're expecting the plan in those months, and then it'll be adopted next May.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I hope I made it clear that, as Melanie said, you know, the environment is a pillar, is one of the pillars of this plan. But that doesn't mean environmental policies are magically going to appear. It's really going to take the advocacy of environmental and conservation groups in the SCAG region and individuals to ensure that, I mean, SCAG's kind of feet are held to the fire. Not that they don't want to include environmental policies per se, but if they're not hearing from that community, then, you know, then it's less likely that strong policies will be included. So I see you went on to further say, I attended a SCAG local workshop and provided comments on a little sticky on each poster. They are soliciting input on what is most important to folks. Yes, so one of the reasons we're doing this webinar today, and we're so thrilled that those of you who attended, and we also know that those of you who attended are probably really good activists and very interested in government. So we were hired by SCAG, or, you know, asked by SCAG to be a community partner in this project. And SCAG is hosting these meetings, as you attended one, which is great. But then they also needed partners to go out to their community and to their allies and talk about this plan. And I'll let, you know, Melanie add anything to that, but Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks was chosen because of their proven advocacy on the environment and on conservation. And we are the only environmental and conservation group that was chosen by SCAG. And so, you know, Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks is really taking it very seriously to ensure that our friends and allies in the conservation community really know how to participate. And we also really want to know what you want so we can advocate on your behalf and with you, frankly.
Yeah, I think you covered everything. I don't have anything else to add to that.
Oh, well, you know, since Melanie is the policy guru on RTPs and SCSs, I will let her respond to that. But I think I know what she's going to say, but I'll let you respond to that.
Sure. So add on. So teeth. The only true teeth relate to the environmental compliance requirement. So the RTP SCS has an EIR and an EIS, a programmatic EIR and EIS, that are considered at the same time those policy documents are considered. So that's where the teeth are in terms of required implementation. The SCS, it's really, as Amy had said before, kind of lofty goals in the document. And I know legislation is creeping its way through the state legislature on actually adding teeth to SB 375, but right now it's just goal setting. And I can tell you for the SCAG region, the Los Angeles County actions are the ones that are helping SCAG most achieve the greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Most of the other counties are simply contributing rather than reducing GHG emissions.
You know, and this doesn't necessarily get at what the teeth are, but if I may say that, and again, to be clear, this isn't addressing what the teeth are, what the stick is, but I think in thinking about a carrot and a stick approach, one of the things I've seen throughout California that can come out of these types of plans is then you can streamline permitting for good projects. So again, I know that's not the teeth side of it, but if a community outlines what it wants, and luckily these plans have to be created, if a community really participates and say what exactly they want for the future, then it becomes easier to get those things done. And again, that's the carrot side of it, not necessarily the stick side of it. But I always like to think about it in those terms as well, that kind of regardless of the teeth, although the teeth are important, having a vision for what a community wants is really important too. And then it gives elected officials and decision makers a way, you know, gives them an avenue to make those projects happen.
I will also add, based on some of the names that are here, that it may be helpful to incorporate something that ties 30 by 30 to the SCAG plan. So,
oh, that's great.
For those of you that aren't familiar with 30 by 30, it's another project FHBP is working on. The governor set a goal to protect 30% of California's lands and waters by 2030. And we are helping accomplish that at the local level, but because of the existing natural and farmland policies in the 2020 plan, wouldn't it be a nice next step if SCAG acknowledged that there was a 30 by 30 effort going on, not only statewide, but nationally and internationally, and that the opportunities they have to promote preservation, maybe at the wildland urban interface, or that basically preclude sprawl, because the goal of the SCAG plan is to reduce vehicle miles traveled and keep people in the city center, which tends to align with conservation goals. Wouldn't it be great if that was another next step? So that's one idea we've been floating in terms of an opportunity in this plan.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of crossover. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination there. And you're welcome. Someone said thank you for answering the questions. You're absolutely welcome. We're happy to answer any questions. As we've said, you know, the plan is only going to be as good as the community participates. I think that there's definitely a nexus between community participation in developing the plan and commenting on the plan and how good the plan, you know, turns out to be. So when does the plan get adopted? I believe, and thinking about the timeline, Melanie, it has to be adopted by 2024. I think the draft plan comes out in, like you said, the late fall. And then are they looking for approval in early 2024 before the fiscal year?
No, it needs to be adopted. There's a specific date. It's either the end of May or early June. So we've got, you know, a solid year to work on this, but the goal is what do we ask for? So
right.
And that's in order to meet the federal conformance requirements. So that's a deadline set by the federal government, not by SCAG. So they work backwards.
Right. And again, you know, the survey that there's a link to from Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, I know many of you, just like probably the beginning of the presentation, you were like, oh my gosh, I already know these things, but those explanations were for the benefit of maybe people who don't know these acronyms. But the survey may seem simplistic to some of you, but again, as Melanie said, we've got a year. This is kind of step one. This is us saying, okay, like, where do we start? And if after the survey is complete, we see that, of the 50, 75, 100 people of our allies and friends that responded are particularly interested in wildlife corridors, or particularly interested in increasing recreation opportunities in open space, then Friends, Harbors, Beaches, and Parks will then take that feedback and then really start to drill down on what exactly the policy should be in the plan. So don't think the survey is too simple. It's just the starting point to see what's most important to you. So then we can get started on those particular policies that should be included. Okay, any more questions?
Again, 2 ways to participate. You can drop something in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll promote you to a panelist, and then you can speak that way.
Yeah. And Melanie, you're recording this, so you'll put the recording on YouTube, both in Spanish and in English. So that's great. So if anyone that's here today knows of someone that wasn't able to attend, they most certainly can watch it on YouTube.
Exactly. And feel free to forward the survey around. It's not limited to people who listened or participated in a workshop of some kind. We're just trying to get feedback.
Yeah, it's definitely, step one in a year-long process. And it'll be fun once we learn what everyone's most particularly interested in, to then start really working on the policies that should be included.
The other thing I'll mention, if it's easier to provide the comments in the survey, if there are specific policies that exist at the statewide level, so I'll use energy or solar, if you're able to point to those examples, basically trying to align the document with something like that is much easier than coming up with something new, for example. So a policy that already exists that we're simply saying align your plan with the existing law, that's a really easy ask.
Definitely, that's a good point. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Monterey County has been doing something interesting that I've watched. They've been doing like a development standards list. They haven't fully finished developing it because obviously it's controversial, but they're trying to develop like a scoring system for development proposals. And I've kept an eye on that because that might be something that can be implemented, in other parts of California. But yeah, it's a hot button issue, but again, that's sort of the opposite of what you're saying. It's a newer policy getting developed, but maybe once it's implemented, that can be something to refer to. No need to reinvent the wheel. Well, if there's no more questions, do you want to add anything, Melanie?
No, just fill out the survey and, share it with folks that you think might be interested, and we'll have everything hopefully posted today on YouTube, and we'll email out a follow-up in case that's an easier way to get feedback. And we appreciate your time, and you'll get 24 minutes of your day back.
24 minutes, you can't undo that, so that's good. Well, again, and I really appreciate everyone for participating. this is going to be a really fun year, and it's a really important year. And so I'm happy to be helping Friends Harbors Beaches and Parks. It's such a well-respected organization. So thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Yesenia, for the translation. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Bye.